Today I'm joined by Ben Higgins. You might know him from a TV series called The Bachelor, but it's been a few years since all of that hype, and there's so many dimensions to this guy, and I'm really grateful to get the chance to dig into some of those a little bit more today. So Ben, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Hey, thank you for having me.
My first question, like I said, it's been several years since all of the action around the show. I'm curious, as you've kind of evolved the last several years and entered this new chapter of life, how has your approach to relationship changed? And what's your perspective now looking back on what you learned about yourself as a result of the series?
Yeah, well, I learned a lot. I mean, it was a big tipping point in my life, and it's interesting when reality television kind of marks a changing or a pivot in anyone's life, but it definitely did for me. And so, I think I went into the show wanting to create a better story for my life. I wanted to do something interesting. I wanted to do something that people could, that if I sat down at a dinner table with friends, that like we had something to talk about. I wasn't really feeling like I was doing much going into it. I don't think reality television was necessarily the best way to heal that desire for legacy and the desire for story, but it definitely added to it. And so I think I came out of it a lot more confident in myself. I did something hard or I did something different.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something I was comfortable with, and yet I did it. And I think that's something I'm really proud of. I think when it comes to relationships, though, there's an interesting moment for me where I was standing on a stage at a church that I'd been to many times, and I was speaking, and all of a sudden it hit me that the reason I was on that stage is because I was also on reality television. But the things I was expressing and the things I was saying were things I had said and when expressed way before reality television. And so it just hit me that everybody has a story worth telling. Some people don't get the platform handed to them to do that. And that's really my view of relationships now, is everybody has a story worth telling, and a story worth listening to, and a story worth trying to understand. Maybe you won't agree with that, where that story has taken them in their views on life, but at least they have a story, and those stories connect us. And so that's, maybe the biggest thing.
Yeah, and also it's so interesting how life unfolds. Often we think we're headed down a certain path that we prepare for. We study in school to do something that we think we'll do forever, and sometimes life just throws us these curveballs. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, imagine that you would have this platform coming off of this program in the way that you did?
No, not at all. I mean, the interesting time when I was on TV was Instagram was just really kind of blowing up.
Right.
And so it wasn't like a thought, oh, we're going to go on this TV and then we're going to become like famous, or we're going to get a platform. It was really the pursuit of just the experience and seeing where the experience brought you. Yeah. Now that quickly changed, right? There was elements to social media that increased kind of what you could do with kind of what you're given from the show. But it never was a thought until post show, when all of a sudden you open up your phone, you're like, goodness gracious, there's something here. Like I have to hold this responsibly.
Yeah, man, it's almost like I'm having visions of a famous athlete coming off of a great game where they just dropped 50 points, and they're looking at their phone and there's just endless notifications. That's when that stuff really started to pop. You're right.
Yeah, no, it's at least they have a talent, a skill set they've worked hard to accomplish, so that they're in that position. When you're on reality television, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like there's no practice, there's no prep, there's no expectation. One day you get a phone call, the next day you're on TV, and then the next day you have a following. So, it's a weird thing to one, be proud of, because you haven't put any work in. And so then it's the question is, what do I do with this? Like, what do I do with something that I've had no plan for or no prep for?
What have you learned in marriage that you didn't know before it? Has it shown you or taught you anything about love that you found novel?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. I've been married since November of 2021, and I have an incredible wife. She is truly my best friend. She is just a great partner. She's a ton of fun. She also lets me be me and lets me do the things that make me me. And we have a great, I guess you'd have to ask her. I have a great marriage because I'm married to her. I think the thing that it kind of evolved over the years, but Love in a romantic sense, in a lot of ways, it is a commitment and it is a decision. Now, for me, as I was saying, my wife makes that decision very easy and very exciting for me that I get to love her. But it, the euphoric, like butterflies, I can't, swept off my feet every day, that goes away. And so, I think the thing that I'm learning is what's left, and what's left is that partnership, is that commitment, is having somebody dig into your best and worst sides of you. And maybe at first for me, that threw me off. You're kind of used to the high school feelings of love where, yeah, it is euphoric, and yeah, you can't think of anything else, and your world's rocked up, every time you see them in the hallway. And so when that isn't an element, it's kind of surprising, but I think it's a lot more beautiful and a lot more steadfast. And so the cool part for me now is the ability to get to know my wife better, and also the beautiful challenge of being able to love her every day.
Right. And you alluded to that high school love. I want to take it back for a second. So we were just chatting, we both spent a good portion of our lives in Indiana. I know for me, some of my best memories of my 20s were spent in Indianapolis, whether at work, hanging out with friends, going to school. When you think back to your time in the Hoosier State, pre-bachelorette, before the spotlight, what sticks out, or what do you feel like those years at or after IU meant for you?
Well, I mean, I think Indiana has a unique way of making contentment very attractive. And it's like, it's true, because there's just not a lot to do all the time. There's some really cool things, and there's some great places, but the activities in Indiana are not like the activities where I live now in Colorado. There is not always something going on. And so you become very happily content, hopefully. And those lessons have followed me today. Like if somebody asked me, what season of life I'm in, I'd say I'm happily content, meaning I'm not like reaching for the next thing. I'm not reaching for the next experience. I don't feel like I need to prove myself or run faster than the person next to me, because, I want to slow it down, and I want to enjoy this ride. That's one thing. And I think the other part is with Indiana is there's just a lot of wisdom there, and there's a lot of thought, and there's a lot of really kind people who want what's best. Even if you might not agree, at least they have like some reasons for backing it up. And I think that's something I enjoy. There's a lot of thought in the people in that state. And, just with the roots of Indiana, it's a farming state, and it's a manufacturing state. And there's just a lot of people that work really freaking hard all the time. And so that's an element that I've learned is, one, to work hard, and two, to be grateful when that work is in front of me. I think those are some of the big lessons.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think everybody should spend some time either living or hanging out in small town America, at least for some part or pocket of life. There's just so much to be gleaned. So how has your purpose shifted over the past decade?
Well, I think, when you are given a platform, you have to ask, what am I going to do with this? And if, the one option is, use it to enhance your relevancy and to enhance your brand and then enhance who you are. And that has elements of being really healthy and good. But if that's your sole pursuit, it's going to get exhausting. It's not fulfilling, and it's going to run out. You cannot stay relevant forever. And so then the other side is that what can you do with this platform for others then? Because if you're not going to do it for yourself, what you can do for others. And I think for me, that's where I found the most joy, is trying to figure out ways to enhance the message and the story of other people who maybe don't have the 1 million followers.
Right.
That's what I do for my job now. That's what I do, in my volunteerships. Like, these are things that I do and enjoy, because it's also selfishly created better stories in my life, and also selfishly brought me more fulfillment than the opposite. And so for me, there's the element of, I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's the healthy thing to do, and I think it's the thing I'm called to do. But then the backside of that is, it's just the thing that's brought me the most joy, and so I don't want to stop it.
I wanted to ask you about celebrity or fame, and I guess in particular, kind of how being in the spotlight, and in your case, the star of one of the most viewed TV shows in our country, certainly at that time, and I'm sure it's still up there. Like, how's that impacted you, especially after it was all said and done? Like, how's the person who came out of that world different than the guy who went into it?
In a lot of ways, I do think there's a little more confidence in just who I am and what I can do. I think there is a little bit of a a hard heart because of the criticism, because of the people taking, you know, a pound of flesh and trying to do it, maybe not even knowing they're trying to do it. I think I'm a little hardened to that. And so that's a thing I'm working on. And I think it's just, when you're in a position where you have a platform, I think you're asked to, and you're also involved in a bunch of really difficult, complex situations. And so for me, the thing that I've started to pick up on a lot of the nuance to all of it. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. If it's when it comes to, you know, faith traditions or politics or our society and culture, to when it comes to relationships, there's just a lot of nuance. And so listening to the nuance, and the reason I'm doing that is because when I was on the show there, I met, you know, 30 amazing people who came to date, and I got to hear all their stories, and it really opened my eyes up to open my eyes up, and it destroyed the assumptions that I had going into it. Part of those assumptions came from growing up in small town America. You're not surrounded by a bunch of people from all over the world with crazy stories all the time. And so when you hear those crazy stories, you start to understand that, hey, not everybody has the same story, and not everybody's going to agree with everything you agree, like that you think is right. And so looking for the nuance, looking for the connection points.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And coming back to the platform that you've created, I've always admired just the positivity, and I'm sure you get this so much, but like you really are such a just a quality person, and spreading that light and spreading that positivity is huge, man. I know you're working on Generous Coffee, your company. What is the vision for that, or I guess the other projects and businesses that are important to you? What are you excited about going forward?
Well, Generous is my main focus, and so right now, you know, there was a season of life where I was starting new things all the time. I was working on getting stuff up and off the ground and seeing how it would work. And so Generous is my main responsibility. And it is the thing, last year I said I'm going to commit to fully for 3 years without starting anything else. I felt like I needed it. I felt like I wanted it, and I want to see it thrive. And so I needed to give it the attention it deserves. So the idea of Generous is that we're a for-profit business that donates 100% of our profits. And so I don't make any money on it. Our CEO doesn't make any money on it. We donate our profits to nonprofits that are fighting human-facing injustice. We do that through selling coffee. Why coffee? It's a really hard industry to sell, really hard product to sell. Well, because we thought we wanted a product that brought people together and that they could tell their own stories with this product. And so coffee kind of fit into the mold. The question comes, what do I see with it? My dream is that it becomes a massive behemoth of a company that is donating so much money every year. And that becomes an issue in itself, is that we can't figure out how to get rid of all the money that we're bringing in because there's just so much coming in. That's the dream of it. That's what we set out to do. We want to make a difference. We want to bring in people into this story. And we want to create a company that other people can look at and say, hey, Generous did this. Now we might not have to give 100% of our profits, but we can give a portion. We can do something with this success. Mm-hmm. So we want to be that model that people look at and say, hey, this is good. This is healthy. They're doing something right.
Yeah. Almost drawing a comparison to the work that Blake Mycoskie did with Tom's, and just having that cause related component, I think is becoming even more important as the world starts to turn and the market starts to, clamor for companies that do good in the world.
I think it's going to become, if you want to get on the front end of where business is going, I do believe that for purpose efforts to care for something in our world, if it's the environment, if it's animals, if it's people, it's going to become a very normal thing for companies to do.
Yes.
We want to be a part of that story.
And then lastly, the show is called Models of Masters. So What is one model, and it could be mental, business, relational, productivity, that you have employed lately that you think has contributed largely to where you're at now?
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you said where I'm at now, because if you would have said success, I would have corrected it and said it's not always that way, right? Not every day is successful. Not every business I started has been successful. Not everything I put my hand into has been successful. In fact, if you weighed it out, it's probably way the opposite direction at this point. And which brings me to the practice is contemplation, meditation and contemplation. I call it prayer. That's because of my faith tradition. That's because of what it's about for me. But when I contemplate, I let my feelings and emotions not be the driver. They're a really good passenger. But I let them come up. I let them have a seat in the front seat, and I like to listen to them and hear them. Am I feeling down today? Am I feeling beat up? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling really great? Am I feeling like, hey, everything's working? Whatever that is, I want to identify those, and then I want to process through those. Like, why am I feeling that way? What's happened in my life that's made me sit in this point and feel like this? And contemplation has been really big for me also, to speak truth over myself. If I do feel like I'm getting beat up and I do feel like, hey, I can't do anything right, well, I can sit down and contemplate and start to pour some like truth over me, on who I believe, I am, and how I believe God sees me, and how I believe my friends see me, my wife sees me, and hopefully come out of that in a place of encouragement. I used to call it let my mind go, because I used to in my 20s. 20s are wild, right? You're out all the time. You're out with friends. You're always running around. There's always somebody stopping in your house. I had a house. I was living alone, so everybody was always over. I would pick certain nights. I would turn off all the lights in my house. I'd light a candle. I played the same playlist, and I would just let my mind go. Like, what's on my heart? What's on my mind? I do still do that to this day, and it's really healthy for me.
So like journaling, I assume, is part of that. Meditation, contemplation,
yeah,
all of those forms of expression and reflection.
Yeah, I mean, I came up with a book 2 years ago. It's called Alone in Plain Sight, and it started as my journal. So it's a journal that came from this. So like when I forgot, hey, I was feeling this way in college, I could pull back that and be like, oh yeah, I wrote that. I don't like journal a full page. I just jot notes. What am I thinking? What am I feeling about myself? And that became the book.
I love it. Amazing. Well, Ben, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, man.
Of course.
We'll include your links in the description. Everybody knows where they can find you.
Hey, from one Hoosier to another. Thanks for having me.
You got it, brother.